So that was incredibly fast. As you all know, the day before just released a couple of days ago. I didn't make a video on it because it just seemed like, I mean, it was a bad game and everybody was going to rip on it anyways, so I didn't really think I needed to say anything that would add to the situation. But today, something happened that I really didn't expect. As of 30 minutes ago, the developers of the day before just announced the full closure of their entire studio, which I think might be a record for the fastest reverse Uno game development situation I've ever seen in my life. Now, the day before, it was bad. I had asked them for a Steam key, and I had booted up the game for a second just to give it a look, and I almost instantly just stopped playing because it was just not worth it. It's one of those games where even making a video about how it's bad almost feels like a waste of time. Like, that's how bad it is. And there's a couple of cool ideas in the game. The UI is kind of nice, and I guess the concept of what they were trying to do was cool if it wasn't for the fact that they just completely failed to deliver on any aspect of that. But the fact that they have now just announced that they are closing down their entire studio is, to me, that's incredibly newsworthy. And I'm going to tell you why I think this is newsworthy. Now, first and foremost, one of the things that I think is just like so bad about this situation is the fact that even in this announcement, they're making it clear that they're not refunding anybody. In fact, the very first paragraph says all income received is being used to pay off debts to our partners, which is just, I had just previously made a video about how investors are like ruining the industry, and I feel like this is just a perfect piece of evidence to show the continuation of that problem. Imagine putting out a game that doesn't do any of the things that it was advertised to do. And then for the few days that you put it out, the money you got from it, you're just going to give to your investors. You're not going to give it back to the people that you straight up scammed. You're going to give it to the investors. That's so fucking stupid. I'm sorry. It's just, dude, I don't know what kind of world we live in now, but the past couple of years, a lot of these game development studios have just been making decisions that are so cartoonishly wrong and just so cartoonishly evil that it's almost hard to believe that I'm not living in like a bad movie right now. Because for them to put out a game for a couple of days and then shut down their studio and then make an announcement almost like rubbing in everybody's face that they're not going to be refunding anybody and they're going to be sending that money to like the investors behind the game that was obviously a scam. Like, dude, you should just not put out an announcement at all. Like, if that's what you're gonna say, don't even put out an announcement at all. But this situation gets worse, and I want to talk about why I think this situation is even worse than people realize. The day before was being sold as an MMO. Now, it wasn't really an MMO because the maximum player count in the game is what, like 32 players? So, I mean, it's not really an MMO, but it was an MMO in the sense that the only people who are allowed to host servers for the game are the developers. And this concept of developers putting out MMO games that the development team is the only one who's allowed to host the servers for this game, I actually think that this is a way bigger issue than anybody really understands. And let me kind of put this into context because I don't think this just includes the day before. I actually think that the idea of what the day before is doing is a recurring industry-wide scam that I feel like at this point, the investors who are investing in projects like this actually know is a scam and might be going forward with it anyways because they know it makes money. And I'm going to give you a few examples of what I'm talking about. So, do any of you guys remember The Cycle? Yeah, that sci-fi extraction shooter that was actually halfway decent. But guess what? After 1 year, I think it was, they had a very similar announcement, which was, oh no, we can't make enough money, and also our game is only hosted by our own development team because we don't allow people to host servers for it. So instead of giving our game to our community who purchased the game so that they can continue playing it and host servers for it and keep it alive, you know what we're going to do instead? We're just going to literally delete the game from existence. And that's what they did. So if you purchased The Cycle, in fact, I actually still have a copy of it on Steam, and you try to play it right now, guess what? You can't. It doesn't matter that you bought that game. It's gone forever. And I don't think a lot of people really think about that as much as they should, because some people are like, okay, well, it's a dead game and that sucks, but that doesn't make it a conspiracy theory. Well, let Mr. Blue Drake explain to you why I think that actually is a total conspiracy theory. You see, these investors, they don't really look at video games in the same way that you look at video games, right? All they care about is money. They don't care about which game makes them the most money. They don't care about how long they have to keep a game in active development in order to make themselves money. They just care about making money any way that they can. But here's the thing that I don't think people think about. At least they don't think about it from the perspective of an investor. If they leave up a game, even a game that you've purchased, but you've only purchased it one time, if they let you continue playing that game, even when they have other games that you could potentially be buying, I think they see that as a loss, because you're sitting here still playing this game that you paid for instead of buying their other games that they can get you to either pre-order or they can also scam you over. I mean, that is really their mentality. When you look at The Cycle, a game that people bought, that people actually paid for, and you take into consideration the fact that you can't play that game anymore. It's impossible. You can't host servers for it. You can't play it in single player. That game literally doesn't exist. I think that there are still people that somehow believe the only way that something like that could happen is if the entire studio went bankrupt. Okay, the entire studio is bankrupt, everybody's fired, there's nobody even there to work on the game anymore or to keep the game alive, so they had to shut down The Cycle after only 1 year, mind you. But no, the development studio that made The Cycle, boy, they are still alive and kicking. They're actually seemingly doing pretty good right now. They have an advertisement on their website that they're hiring new developers, yet all the while, The Cycle, which they accepted people's money for, is still in my Steam library, and it is literally completely unplayable. Now, in my opinion, having a game that's only been out for 1 year that you made people pay full price for and then you shut down so they can't play it at all, I still believe that that is completely unacceptable. But this situation with the day before is like that problem on cocaine, because this situation isn't now just happening in the scale of a year. This situation is occurring in less than a week, where they accepted your money, where you bought a full-priced game, and they are now telling you after less than a week they have no intention to finish this game, and that the servers, which only they are allowed to host, are inevitably also going to eventually be shut down, which makes the game completely unplayable. And I feel like this should be illegal. Straight up. I feel like there needs to be some kind of policy against this. Like Valve, Steam, you guys have got to step in and accept at least some accountability for this, because Steam takes 30% of sales, right? So Steam is very much profiteering off of this situation, in addition to the investors probably also profiteering. And I know there's going to inevitably be people still somehow trying to defend the development studio behind the day before, and they're going to say, oh, but the development team, they're not making any money either. They're going to go bankrupt, so they can't support this project. I would like to draw your attention to the section of this announcement where they go ahead and promote all of their other games that are also on sale on Steam. So throughout this entire time that they could have been developing the day before, they have actually been releasing completely separate games that are fully commercial games being sold on Steam, that they are now using this situation with the day before to promote, which is not only incredibly disgusting, in my opinion, but I would also go as far to say that that is evidence that their studio is actually financially doing just fine. They have no intention to shut down the studio. They're probably still going to have developers on payroll. They're still going to have a CEO at the studio collecting a paycheck from all of these other games that they've released during this time. They just want to stop working on the day before. Let that sink in. Do you think that they're going to stop selling all of those other games? You don't think there's going to be somebody at that studio to continue collecting all of those paychecks from all of those other games that they have up for sale right now? Hell no. They're going to continue raking that money in. They're just straight up refusing to finish the day before, while also refusing to refund anybody that they successfully scammed during the launch of their game. Like, dude, this is so clear-cut wrong. So clear-cut wrong. This has to be illegal. There has to be someone that puts a stop to this. The cycle was bad enough. And all of these other games that are pulling very similar tactics, where they put out a game, and then after they've sold all the copies that they can for the game, it's not like they just stop development. No, they erase that game from existence, so even people who bought the game can't play it anymore. All of that stuff needs to be put a stop to. And I want to clarify something else, specifically with the early access title. Because I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, there's that disclaimer on any game that's in early access where you should be aware that the game is in early access, there might be parts of it that are broken, and if you purchase it, again, this is in the disclaimer on the store page, that you should only purchase the game if you are okay with the state of development that it's in. And I want everybody to understand, I actually understand that. I am actually 100% okay with that. If there is an early access game on Steam and it's not completed, but it is still fun for the amount of money that you buy it for, then it might still be worth buying. And I myself have lots of Steam games in my library that are early access, that were never finished, that I think were still totally worth the money that I paid for them. But I want to clarify, that is not what projects like The Day Before and projects like The Cycle are. Because the people that purchased The Cycle, the people that purchased The Day Before, what they are now getting isn't the version of the game that was in an incomplete state when they decide to purchase it. When those servers shut down and the game is literally completely unplayable, even though it's in your library, even though you purchased it, you're not getting the version of the game when it was incomplete in early access. You're literally getting nothing. You can't play the game at all. And I would actually say that that is in violation of that early access disclaimer. Because in some cases, especially with the cycle is actually pretty fun as a single player game. I could play that by myself and I would still have fun. So if there was a disclaimer that was like, oh, you only get the version of this game that's at the state that it's in when you purchase it, if I could still play that version of the game, I'd be happy. But I can't play it at all. I'm not even getting that anymore. I'm not even getting the version of the broken ass early access game that I bought. I'm getting literally nothing. And that is now what the Day Before is doing, not on a year scale, not on a couple months scale, on less than a week. They are selling you a game and then announcing that they're shutting down, and then that game that you bought that you're not going to get a refund for, you're never going to be able to play that again. It's not like, oh, you'll be able to play the broken version of it. You're not going to be able to play it at all. That should not be legal. Steam, Valve, you all need to accept accountability for this. You all are complicit. You are taking 30% of this project that is blatantly a scam and is also online only. So when they take this down, all of the people who purchased this won't even be able to play the broke-ass early access version that they purchased. They're not going to be able to play anything at all. That should not be allowed. It should not be. There should always be a version of the game, early access or not, that you can play that's at least at the state it was in when you bought it. At least. That should be a bare minimum requirement. And the fact that the Day Before is so bold-faced going into this situation, making an announcement like this where they have no intention to refund their very few, I imagine, supporters, and they're simultaneously admitting that they have no intention to continue developing the game while also promoting their other projects that you can still buy on Steam. This is just the most brazenly evil thing I've ever seen a studio do. And people need to be held accountable. People need to be held accountable. Ugh, it's bad. Well, that's all I wanted to say about this situation for myself for today. If you guys enjoy my videos and you want to come and help us with our own game development project, which, by the way, you have the ability to play in single player and you have the ability to host your own servers for, so even if we somehow evaporated and our whole studio shut down, you can still play, because that's the kind of stuff that we believe in. If you want to help with a project like that, you can click the links down in the description. And besides that, hopefully, I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.